Welcome Past, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo.
So welcome to the show. Today is Tuesday and this is going out live on Mintwave Radio. If you have the Alexa skill, you can just ask Alexa. If not, go to the website above. You will be able to see the schedule for the week's shows ahead. And if this is via podcast, you can also download the app for Apple and Android. Feel free to subscribe to any of the shows that take your fancy. Now, today's episode is 161, and today we have Coach Riana Milne, and she is a certified global life, love trauma, recovery and mindset coach, and she is also a #1 best-selling author. Now, today we're going to be talking about how childhood, dating and relationship trauma and unconscious emotional triggers impact our adult life and love relationships. My name is Karen Robertson. We are helping coaches and therapists get their message heard to the people who need to hear it. Now, Coach Riana was featured in the March 14th, 2023 Influencer Daily, selected as one of the top coaches to follow in 2022 by Wealth Insider magazine, and is also featured in Forbes magazine and Business Success magazine in 2023. She is a certified global life, love trauma, recovery, mindset coach, advanced certificate clinical trauma and addictions professional, and is a #1 best-selling author. So welcome to the show, Riana.
Thank you, Karen. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
First of all, before we get into today's topic, if you'd like to share with the listeners a little bit about your backstory, how you came to be doing what you're currently doing.
Well, that's a little bit of a story. At age 16 is where it starts. Actually, it started before that. But that was the real jolt in my life when my best friend as a child from age 5 through 16 was killed by a drunk driver. And during that loss, I asked my mom if I could go to a counselor to handle the grief. And she said, no one in this family will ever go to a counselor. And I said, then I will grow up and become one. So that was the start of the declaration of what I chose to do in my life. I had another loss when I was at Penn State. My roommate of 3 years was murdered by her boyfriend, Corinne. So with those two losses, I took Michael and Corinne's heart into my soul and turned around and decided to give back to people of domestic violence and people who have gone through love trauma. And I had my own love trauma. And my partner, husband, who did something that shook up us and was highlighted all over the community due to his position at work. It was horrendous. And he's there, I don't know why I sabotage everything I love. And I said, I don't know either. And my psychotherapy mind is going through the DSM-4, which is our manual of diagnostic codes. And there, nothing is in there about this type of impulsive behavior. And I started the research on my own because I went to 7 therapist friends. They couldn't help me heal. This was love trauma. Love trauma isn't explained in the DSM-4. The closest thing would be PTSD, but that's not really even touching it. So that's when I uncovered the huge correlation between childhood trauma leading up to love trauma, the partners we select, our behavioral norms, and so forth. The first thing I did was stand up as my own attorney, got an annulment from that marriage, and started then writing books and my workbooks on this correlation between childhood and love trauma, and then started coaching full-time in 2017 globally. And coaching is great because I can help people around the world. Whereas a therapist, I'm just limited to Florida State now.
Yeah, sure. And so many people are suffering from this, but are they aware of it?
No, many aren't. I've been talking though since 2015 about it. So my voice is getting out there. So people are much more aware of it when they were in the beginning. I was called crazy. I was told I was making it up. And now look at all the things. I created the childhood trauma checklist in 2012, which was from my research and really all my background. I worked with people of trauma. So it wasn't just my own incident. As a therapist, I work in a school as a SAC counselor, student assistance counselor. So I was handling all the emotionally upset kids, many of them misdiagnosed with ADHD when they were really suffering from traumatic homes. Then I worked in a mental health unit at a hospital for kids age 5 through 19. So I had all those critical kids. And I'm also an LCADC, a drug and alcohol counselor. So I worked in a women's rehab with women from the prison system, and they were age 19 through 65 plus. So it didn't depend on their culture, their background, their age. The same childhood trauma issues kept showing up. So from that, my real experience is where, of course, I was still in also private practice. So that's where I created the childhood trauma checklist, which was quite different than the ACE test that was out. I found the ACE test had huge misses, like not including anyone from the foster care system, which was a lot of the kids I took care of in the hospital setting. It did not include bullying, which was one of my big traumas, and growing up in another person's home. So again, my results from my childhood trauma checklist, very easy for the clients to use. Top 10 traumas. There's more, but these were the top 10 I saw. And then if I knew they had them, then I would assess the severity level from their conversations with me and the questions asked, and then what's showing up in their life today. And I'd make the correlations between the two. And that was my roadmap to help them heal and create the life they then desired and to have the love that they deserved.
So how is it? How is all this childhood trauma? How is it holding people back from having the life and love relationship that they've been dreaming of?
In many ways. So let's talk about the 7 categories where childhood trauma shows up. So the first one is in your personal health, and that was the Kaiser Permanente study, did over 17,000 people who were overweight. So they assessed the whole health aspect of unhealed childhood trauma. So that led to sleep disorders and poor immune functioning like fibromyalgia or Epstein-Barr virus, cardiovascular disease, earlier death, which is about 10 years earlier in your lifespan, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, other things that are definitely affecting your body. Then we go into the emotional aspect. So there's difficulty controlling your emotions and shame and guilt over things because you're just not healed from them. Excessive worry, high anxiety, feelings of hopelessness, being stuck in fear-based negative thinking. The thinking is really impacted. Feelings of helplessness. You're just afraid. You're afraid to say yes to yourself and opportunities. Let's go into section 3, which is relationships. So I can go into that later when I name what the 10 traumas are, but difficulty even forming relationships, sustaining them over time. There's intergenerational cycles of trauma. In fact, my research shows that it affects at least 3 generations of the family. Other research has shown that Holocaust victims, it impacted even their DNA, their survival of the lineage. So attachment problems, low trust of yourself and others, low self-esteem, low confidence. So that's another section. Then, of course, your mental health, right? So depression, which is bouts of depression. Most don't have ongoing depression that come to me, but they do have ongoing high anxiety, negative self-esteem and low self-image. Some have PTSD, some have suicidal thought processes. Behaviors, there's a lot of impulse sometimes with these clients. There's aggression, poor impulse control, risk-taking, sexually acting out to get love. So being intimate too early, and then that sabotages their relationships. Definitely self-medicating with alcohol, drugs, pills, pot, whatever. Now, in the children, we're seeing brain development issues like smaller brain size, less efficient processing of their facts, slow learners. So that's why they're identified ADHD. I had a child come into my school when I was in the elementary school, and they said, "Miss Riana, my mom didn't come home last night." I said, "Was anyone in the house with you?" He goes, "No." I said, "How'd you know to get up and get ready for school?" He goes, "I know to set my alarm if my mom's not there. And I get up and I have my cereal and get out to the bus in time." So this child had nobody. And she was sleeping on the streets in Atlantic City. So, they're coming in hyper cortisol raised up. When cortisol is up, learning and memory is down. So I was doing kind of woo-woo weird things in my SAC office, which was called Miss Riana's relaxation room, where they would come in and meditate with me on the floor. We did music therapy. One of the favorite songs was Louis Miguel, right? A Spanish singer. And I don't even know the Spanish, but the melody was so calming to my students. And then I'd have positive behavior modification with charts all over my walls in my office for all my kids I was seeing. So I was really working with lowering the cortisol and having them be able to process their feelings without fear. But it's definitely, there's a change in gene expression very often. And then cognition, it impairs the readiness to learn. You know, if this is a chaotic home that this child is growing up in, they're not learning, they're slower to develop. There's language delays, problems with concentration, and poor academic achievement, unless the SACs in the school learn this type of thing. And unfortunately, we're the first usually to let go if they don't have a grant, but they'll keep the football coach. But we have gun shootings all over the US in our schools. We should be the first to be hired. People with definite clinical trauma healing remedies and behavior modification to help our kids in the schools.
And I suppose, are people coming to you more as adults and having to deal with it? But yes, so you're doing both sides of the scale, trying to deal with it when they're still children, is what should be doing, because then it will be healed and dealt with in no time at all. So
my last school I was in, I was laid off due to funding, and my kids were in tears. My principal was in tears, and it was a funding issue. And the month before I got teacher of the month. So it definitely wasn't based on performance. So it's a shame. They've got it wrong when it's at the school boards. They really should be addressing mental health as a first priority, period. No discussion.
Absolutely. That could be a whole other show. What should be taught in schools?
For real. Yeah.
We could solve the whole problems in one generation. And it is interesting to hear that, and I've heard this a few times, that these things can, yes, it's going to, eventually it could affect the DNA if the trauma was so much, and when it is generational.
Yes, because it occurs in utero first. So if we have a very anxious, upset mother, that gets passed on to the child.
Yeah.
And of course, she comes from parents that had trauma. So there's 3 generations right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you describe what are these top 10 traumas that these kids are going through?
Okay, so this is from my childhood trauma checklist. And again, there's more, but these are the ones that I found to be most prevalent. And again, for the layperson that's listening, this is not about blaming your parents or feeling shame in yourself, right? This is just, we can't change what we don't know or understand. That's my big quote. And I couldn't change my partner selection until I uncovered the research on childhood trauma, and then decided to do research on what is an emotionally healthy, evolved, and conscious relationship. So from that research is what I also help teach my clients. So again, it's not blame or shame. So it's just acknowledging if you recognize any of these top 10. So the first one is if there's any addiction in the house. Being an addiction counselor, I named several of them. So there's drugs and alcohol, and that was the only 2 mentioned on Kaiser Permanente. Where's the rest? Okay, so there's sex, meaning you knew your parent was a cheater, so sex addiction. Porn, gambling, hoarding, spending, eating, gaming, TV watching, workaholism, and social media or machine addictions. I call them the machines, the phones, the computers, whatever machine you're on and you're putting your kids on to check out. So those are the top 12 addictions. The second one is verbal messaging. So did you watch your parents argue and fight a lot? Is that how they handled issues? And you may tend to be a yeller. Or if you try to intervene and you got punished severely, you would probably be one to shut down and get really quiet if someone is upset with you. You're afraid to speak. Did you hear the messages, I love you? Did you get compliments? So all of this is really attacking the self-esteem if you have not heard those words, right? Instead of getting verbal put down, or you were told, change your outfit, you look fat in that. These kind of messages stay with people for a long time. The third is emotional abuse or neglect. The fourth is any physical abuse, hitting, or sexual abuse, rape, or molestation. And again, these could happen inside or outside of the home. This is just her whole childhood experiences. The next one is abandonment. And I named 2 types, and they missed that completely on the first Kaiser ACE score. So abandonment is fault or no fault. So no fault abandonment would be if a parent happened to die early, or if they go and serve their country in war. And being in an elementary school during the Iraq War and Afghanistan, I saw these children really just emotionally check out, worried about their mom or dad being overseas. So it's really quite impactful with trauma. Another one is if your parent travels a lot for work. And we call it no fault because this is what they feel is the right thing. They're supporting their family. And that was one of mine. My dad, what we didn't know, he was FBI and CIA. So we didn't know until he was older and sick with cancer that we got letters from the president thanking for him for his many years of service. And I'm like, oh, that's where dad was. I used to ask my mom, when's dad coming home? She'd go, I don't know where he is. So for a kid, it's, is my dad okay? So that not knowing is the anxiety. Okay. And then there's fault abandonment. So a fault is never being involved in your child's life or being involved while the couple's together, then rarely seeing your child. And it also could mean there is a parent in that household, but they're so disconnected. That might be someone going to work all day, coming home, eating real quick, and going into their home office to work until bedtime and not supporting their kids in their school activities. So they're just emotionally absent, but present physically. Okay. All right. And then the next one we go on to is if you're part of the foster care system, you had to go live in another person's home, even if it's your aunt's or grandma's home. And someone asked me, Riana, what if I just choose not to go home and I'm staying at my friend's house? I said, yes, that would fall under that category because they were alcoholics and she didn't want to go home. Okay. The next one is which one most people can identify with. It's called personal trauma. So if you've ever been bullied or felt different, so this could be you were a chubby and overweight child or identified as ADHD in school and had to go to special classes. It could be that you were the only African-American in all Caucasian school or coming out as LGBTQ plus, right? And feeling different if your peers didn't accept you or your family didn't accept you. So many people can relate to that one. The next one, number 8, is sibling trauma. So this is any interactions around the sibling. They could have been bullying you, or you perceive them to be the golden child, the favored one, the star athlete, the more handsome or beautiful one, the better student, and you always felt you couldn't measure up. Also, if your sibling was born with a medical issue and that commanded more of mom's and dad's time, you put to the side. You didn't get as much attention. Okay, so that's trauma 8. Trauma 9 has 2 parts because I had to move what was once trauma 11 down because it's one of the most prevalent traumas today. So I put it with number 9. And number 9 was family trauma, and I moved down community trauma. So community trauma is our COVID pandemic, right? It impacts everyone in the community around the world. That's also our Mother Nature events. If your whole town was wiped out by flood, fire, or hurricane. It's also our mass shootings, our school shootings, things like that, affecting the community at large. Then that, of course, impacts the family. But other family trauma is if there was an incarceration. But family moves, like in the US, our military moves every 2 to 4 years. That puts that child into new schools all the time. Growing up in poverty or in a dangerous neighborhood. So there's many around family trauma. Those are just a few. And then trauma 10 is mental health issues in mom and dad. Now, I'm part of the baby boomer generation, so we didn't see our parents go to counseling. And as I was growing up, it was considered shameful. We have to guess if our parents struggled with that sometimes. Often you'll see if they were, the 2 most difficult was borderline and bipolar. So borderline is fast, erratic moods. When they're good, they're great. When they're bad, they're horrid. And the child never knows what they're going to get. So that leaves them in a high state of anxiety. And then bipolar is manic depressive. Manic can be a high and happy phase, but it's often matched with the depression that comes with a like shopping spree or gambling spree, a drinking binge, which is part of very often the manic phases. So
Yeah.
those are the two difficult ones that kids have a real hard time navigating around. So those are the top 10 traumas on my childhood trauma checklist.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like a lot of people could relate to something in that
Yes.
list, right? Which just goes to show that would it be true to say that we all need to
Yes.
heal from certain?
Yeah. In 2021, I do forget the researcher, but it was out there that 100% of us have childhood trauma. And definitely the healing is so important to feel wonderful about yourself, about life, to feel confident. It even impacts you in business. Because if you're an entrepreneur and you're afraid to spend money and invest on yourself to go to the next level due to fears holding you back around growing up in poverty, then it's going to stunt your growth in business or your success in your career. So the ability to say yes and take focused risk to grow and learn. A lot of people are stuck in the fears and the negativity. So it impacts you everywhere.
So everybody really would benefit from actually, and like you said earlier about a lot of us have been brought up to therapy. I don't need, there's nothing wrong with me. And there is some kind of shame attached to it because so many people have been conditioned to think that, oh, if I do that, then that's admitting some kind of failure or there's something wrong with me. But the fact is that we've all been through something
We've all had
of varying degrees, and it's not a competition, is it? It's certain traumas that might seem small in comparison to somebody who's been involved in a war-torn area, but the trauma is still going to be the same because we're talking about a child's brain, aren't we?
There's big T trauma and little t trauma. So big T trauma is like facing active duty in a war or losing a limb in a car accident, right? Yes, there's big major traumas. And that's when people say, I didn't have any traumas growing up. But little t is the ongoing emotional traumas that kids are going to. Even if you had the perfect household, but you're getting bullied at school, that's ongoing emotional abuse. It can come from any different area. It can come from our teachers, our coaches, anyone. Like I had a very abusive coach. And that's a shame because sports is supposed to be for fun and I hated it. So it really can come from any area as you're growing up. But yeah, you had mentioned therapy. To me, I do my most intensive work with coaching because as a CTP2, which is certified clinical trauma professional, I have many tools I have to teach my client. So I love coaching because my client is my teammate. I have a 150-page workbook that they fill out. And from what they tell me, then I know how to turn around and teach them what skill they need at that time from their feelings that I am processing in their writing or what they say to me. So very much coaching is like teamwork and educational, where counseling is more just processing your feelings. So they stay stuck. I've had people say, I've been in 7 years of therapy, and in 1 hour with you, I've learned more than I have in 7 years, which was just going over their childhood trauma checklist and making the correlations that I make. It's a very highly educational model, and that's why 98% of my practice is coaching today. Yeah.
Because you're looking for change.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what they're investing in, the change and to feel better and happier and to find love. So let's talk about how does it impact them in relationships, right? That's the big way. Okay, so if you can identify what you've gone through, here's just a few of the patterns. I have over 24 of them. So this is just a few, a sample. So let's say your partner has jealous streaks and is very controlling. Then they grew up usually probably with trauma 7. They were bullied, not feeling good enough. They also heard verbal messaging, verbal abuse, or put downs from their parents. Again, those two in combination can cause a lot of jealousy because that person doesn't feel good enough about themselves. Okay, so then they feel like they're going to lose that partner and they start trying to invict control on their partner. Impulsivity can come from someone, let's say they grew up in with money struggles and now they're working hard and the money might be still a little tight, but they see the shiny red sports car and says, I'm getting it, I deserve it, and just buys it. Say the husband gets it and says, my wife just is going to have to deal with it. So impulse is also where cheating comes from in relationships. My wife said no to me today, and this pretty little waitress is coming on to me. So I'm just going to be with her because I deserve it. So that impulse is also where the narcissism lies as well. They don't think of others' feelings or if they're going to get hurt. They just do what they want to do. Okay. So that's impulsivity. People pleasing is one that a lot of women do. If they had a difficult father or mother that was a yeller, they would do anything, tiptoeing around the house, making sure things, the siblings were taken care of, or they tidied up their room just so they wouldn't be yelled at. So they're used to people pleasing and overdoing for others. And this is when I hear a lot of women say, I do everything for my husband and my kids, and they do nothing for me to show me any love. I'm burnout and I'm exhausted, and I don't even know who I am anymore. So they just lose themselves trying so hard to please the other. And that is a sign of growing up in a difficult household. If they had abandonment issues, that usually leads to codependency and love addiction, and something that we call RS, relationship repetition syndrome. So they might break up with someone, and in 10 days, they start missing the love and the attention, even if a lot of it was toxic. And then they'll go back again. And then they break up and they go back again. The research actually shows these people go back an average of 7 times to try and make it work. Or the other way that shows up is same person, different face. So it's the same personality type, but they keep going for the same person over and over again and continue to get hurt. So they can't decipher what's emotionally healthy and what's not. Their subconscious is attracting them to toxic people, which is what we all call chemistry. So when people only fall in love with chemistry, it's really dangerous because the chemistry pulls you to your back past patterns, because the brain likes homeostasis. It likes what it knows, even if it's good or bad. So it doesn't decipher that part. It just likes what it knows, what is normalized. So that's a big one. Addiction can be born from a difficult home, of course, if you start indulging in drugs and alcohol early. Imposter syndrome is another one of our actors and our movie stars, our singers. They reach a certain level and then they feel they don't deserve it, or they self-destruct. Perfectionism, blaming behavior, or even blurting out. We had a very high political official here in the US that used to say things people were like, what did he just say? This shock value. And he actually grew up in a very traumatic home with an alcoholic father. So he is a victim of childhood trauma. I should be his coach to make sure he doesn't do those things anymore. But it's very obvious and very shocking because there's no filter. So that's what we call blurting out. So those are just a few of the things that I see and I decipher.
I mean, it's when you put it like that, it's just so when you can step back and look in, you think, okay, yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But I suppose when people are in it, it's not so easy to see for themselves. I suppose that's why it's better to work with a coach. But
someone that's very trauma trained is very much a specialty area. Yeah, very much.
But it does sound like that. People maybe need to be a little bit careful about the coaches that they do choose as well, because maybe there's a little bit more in depth that they need to go to help them move forward. Exactly. So what are some of the actual examples of the sort of destructive or self-sabotage patterns that people are doing because of these traumas?
Well, I already named about 8 of them.
But with regards to, so say when people are going, we've talked about people repeating patterns because their chemistry, as you call it, is addicted to that kind of, whether it's toxic or not. But in relation to even business,
okay, so let's talk about business outcomes. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so yes, if you're trying to get your own business off the ground and you're afraid to grow, you don't say yes to the next coach you need. It is an investment to grow your business. So whether you're in the financial business or real estate business, it doesn't matter. There's instructors and coaches and courses that you need to take and grow. And some people just don't invest in themselves because they're afraid, I don't have the money. I had someone say that to me once, well, I don't have the money. And she ends up working with me and she had 500,000 in her account. So they had the money. Their fear just held them back until she finally says, I really want emotionally healthy love. I have to take care of what I grew up with. So when people say they don't have the money, very often they do, but they have the fear of spending it on themselves. And that is a very strong childhood pattern. In the workforce, if you have a bully as a boss, that's another sign that he has trauma. Being very competitive with your coworkers. I say this amongst like a sales team when they have these awards and the leaderboards and this kind of thing. If there's someone super aggressive and has to win and undercutting and nasty, that's because they grow up hearing messages, you'll amount to nothing. So they become super, super competitive. I see it also like in the athletic fields. Someone comes to me super addicted to the gym. Bodybuilders very often grew up being teased and bullied because they were the small person. They didn't grow to normal height. They might have been a shorter man. So now there's, okay, I'm going to make my body like super, in their mind, attractive. And then they get body dysmorphic where they just keep thinking they need more and more. And it's then becomes almost a narcissistic impact that they're so obsessed with perfectionism, right?
Yeah.
So it shows up in many different ways. Like I said, our actors, models, it shows up everywhere. Our singers. I was watching a story on Britney Spears last night when a lot of the struggles she's had, and they call it mental health issues. It's childhood trauma issues that she grew up needing to perform and be perfect. And she was the breadwinner of the family. So there's a lot of pressure for a young person there. So she has a lot of trauma, childhood trauma acting out now. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And with regards to relationships, like you say, a lot of people will repeat these, just get the same sort of partner, as it were. But for some people, it can start off being or looking perfect. So why do things turn toxic? It can start off so well and end up so toxic.
There are red flags that my clients know to look for. But even before you get into the relationship, we do what's called conscious dating. So I have 24 questions that they need to ask to figure out if this person's emotionally healthy in front of them. They can figure that out in date 1 or 2, so they're not wasting any time. So many people go on looks and chemistry, and then they get sexually and intimately involved, and then they end up with this partner that really is not good for them. People that grew up love-starved and craving love, if there's someone who love bombs, that's a real sign usually of trauma, giving you so much so early on, calling you 10 times a day. This is usually the jealous, controlling one. Okay. And the first 90 days, this is why we have a 90-day rule, usually looks magical in any relationship. If it's not, then you've already got signs of trouble. Then that's red flags and you should be leaving that person. But if it's so over the top love bombing, that's also a red flag. But the struggles start showing up according to research, and most people that I work with, month 4 to month 9. And this is when they might be exclusive, living together, getting engaged, having a child, getting married. Okay. During these life transitions, then the niceties often break down. If someone has mental health issues or are toxic, they can't hold on to that I'm a great person role for too long. That's why the love bomber wants to nail you down really quickly. And very often, if you get an early marry invitation, let's say you're a very successful female and you're dating this handsome, charming guy, and he's just love bombing you and wants to marry you within 2 to 3 months, that's a sign to run. And so many women say, oh my gosh, he's so perfect, and he wants to marry me. And they take it as a compliment instead of being forewarned. And they go after that woman that tends to have low self-confidence. Or this would be the sociopath, by the way. The sociopath uses another for pleasure, profit, or lifestyle advancement. So the man, if he's not earning as much money, goes very heavily after the successful woman. You better be careful. There's all these signs that my clients learn to watch out for early on. They know the questions to ask. And then they also know, what does the emotionally healthy, evolved relationship look like? So I could tell you a little bit of that. So we go into what is positive in a relationship.
Yeah, it's not all. I don't
want to be all gloom and doom here today.
Yeah, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but it sounds like you've just got to be aware.
Yeah,
If
it's
you're not
education.
aware, you're
That's
you're
why I
you're
said there's
going
so much to teach my clients. I am in the role of an educator as a coach. That's how I look at it as a coach. I don't know what other coaches want to do, but that is my role. And I describe to my clients, they're starting at that place of, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know how to fix it, because I was there and I get it. But I look at it as a rainbow. There's this huge learning curve that they need all these skills. Once they know them and start practicing them with me, the other side is the pot of gold. They live their lives really empowered and feeling totally different and confident and high self-esteem. And they know exactly what to look for. And they know what to bring of themselves into a healthy relationship. So this is just one page of my 400 book, Love Beyond Your Dreams. Okay. Break free of toxic relationships to have the love you deserve. So this is from page 294. What are the 5 F's of an emotionally healthy relationship? So the first one is foundation. You need a solid foundation in friendship. You have the ability to trust yourselves and each other. You're confident with who you are as a person, and so is your partner. And you share the same moral values and the direction you want to go in your life. Really important. That's foundation. Second is flexibility. You both have an open mind and you're caring, and you let your partner to have their own belief system. Like, you're not forcing them to get the vaccine if they choose not to. You're not forcing them to vote for a political president that you think is the right one. Let them have their own vote. That's why we vote in private, right? So that open-mindedness to let them be themselves and respecting that person. Fidelity, having honesty, loyalty, and integrity with your partner. I describe integrity as doing the right things when nobody's looking. You always have your partner in mind. You're a team, whether you're an individual in the office there during the day, your partner is still with you. You're making choices that's good for the both of you. Friendship. He should be your best buddy, your pal. You should be able to laugh and joke around and have a great time. And as you're meeting, you want to meet and get along with their friends and he with your friends, right? So you don't narrow and cut out other people's friendships. That's important that we all get along. So friendships, respect, reliability, kindness, acting like you're their best friend, because you should be. And the 5th F is fun. You have common interests and hobbies and shared activities that you really enjoy together, but they can have their own thing. If you're not a sports fisherman, you can go shopping that day. You don't have to share everything, but he shouldn't also have to give that up. Another one is intimacy, the balance of deep friendship and love on a regular basis, daily affection, hugs, kisses. It shouldn't be only affection when you want to do the sexual act. If men are like that towards their women, just aren't attracted. They're not turned on. They don't have that constant love flowing. Another one is compromise, the ability to negotiate your differences, the ability to easily apologize if you've done wrong and forgive. We're all human. We all are a work in progress. We all make mistakes. So you have to be able to reach new goals around an infraction and forgive and move forward. Balanced individuals. You both have to feel really great and balanced in your life, mind, body, spirit, and have a balance. I have balanced triangles that I teach. And one is me, you, and us. So you have to have your own time, your own hobbies, your own friendships and activities, and so does he. And then you have them jointly as well. And one of the top things that keeps a couple together and sustainable is spirituality. So the belief in faith in something higher than yourselves. And that doesn't mean religious practice that you have to go to church every week at a certain time. No, that's religious practice. This is a way of being 24/7. If you're both spiritual, then you are always looking to do the kind and loving thing for all.
Lovely.
So when you are this yourself and you take that into a relationship, when you're out there dating, you are not going to settle for anything less. So my people are empowered with the messages, I am the whole package. And actually, Karen, there's a free quiz on my website, rianamilne.com. It's, are you really ready to date and have a relationship? So all my clients do that. It's the top 10 checklist. And also the childhood trauma checklist is on there too. But they go through and really analyze what areas do they need work on. Are they really ready for that relationship, or do they need to work on certain things so that they can feel very confident and empowered when they go out? And I do not teach be vulnerable. Absolutely not. Be
Good.
empowered and yet be able to share your feelings and with confidence. So that's empowered, not
Yeah.
vulnerable, where you're weak and prone to attack. No, not my people.
Good. Great tip. And so for people, if they have, how do they heal from this childhood trauma so that they can have healthy relationships moving forward in adulthood?
Yeah, it's my trademark process. I have a 150-page workbook. So first we identify the traumas and process that. The trauma work is right out of the box. I look at their biology. I do vitamin therapy, meditation. None of my people are in psychoactive drugs because that just is a Band-Aid. That's not fixing. If you're on an anti-anxiety or depression pill, my people are like, Riana, wean me off of that. I don't want to be on it anymore. And they use their mindset to heal because mind impacts your body, right? So it's what you think about is how your body responds. So I do a lot of biology in the beginning and healing the trauma from the brain and the body. And then part 2 is creating the goals of the life they truly desire. And we're always working on those throughout the 4 or 6 months they work with me. And then part 3 is learning spirituality and faith and trust in themselves first, right? And concepts for mindset. And then the second part is all relationship. If they're single, how to date and ask the questions that are super important to know, identifying if they were codependency and breaking those habits or having any love addiction, understanding what they were doing that was toxic, pushing people away or sabotaging their relationships and what they should be doing instead. I teach a lot around communication. My first degree is from Penn State in speech communication. So the ability to communicate your feelings and work as a team. Really, there should be no yelling in a relationship unless someone's in harm's way, because yelling does nothing. So if they were a
It's a
yeller, we have to stop.
It's a simple bad reaction that is habitual, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, it's one of their behavioral norms that they learn from childhood, or someone is pushing their emotional triggers and we have to get rid of those so that you can have a calm and loving conversation to reach new goals with your partner.
Right.
So there's all kinds of rules, skills around that, new communication, especially for a couple. When I have a couple in front of me, it's partner A, partner B, and then the C is the relationship. So I have to work around all 3 of these, right? I have to heal the trauma for each one and understand it, then teach their partner where their vulnerabilities are, their pain points from their childhood, and how they can be a supportive best friend when they see their partner hurting.
Yeah, because if they don't know, again, they might not be responding in the correct way. But then, yeah, if you're aware of both sides, then you're going to show a little bit more compassion, aren't you? It all makes sense, and it just seems does seem crazy that it's not taught in schools, because at the end of the day, everything is down to relationships, isn't it?
And then healing the relationships with brothers, sisters, moms, dads, friendships. Very often these people have very little friendships and they want more. I've recently gotten into doing singles trips, cruises, and vacations as a coach as well, so that these singles have a group of singles that are learning at the resorts or on the cruise ship. I lecture. I'm a lecturer on cruise ships now. So they learn how to have a fun vacation. So many singles want vacations, but have no one to travel with. So if they know other singles are going and they're learning all this positivity and mindset work and how to have a great vacation and be positive about it, and everyone's doing it, it ends up to be fabulous, right?
Yeah,
So
sure.
this is another service I offer out of the box for singles. Yeah.
So your whole coaching program. So did I hear you say it's a 6 month program? 6 month program.
4 to 6 is the options. Yes.
So if people can't see your details below, so if they're watching this on YouTube or on social media, they'll have all your details. But if they're listening via the radio or they're listening via podcast, how do they get in touch with you, or how do they get in to come onto your program?
The best way is my website, rianamilne.com. That's my name, RianaMilne.com. And that is where you can get the 4 free love tests. There's a free ebook on the homepage. My podcast connection is there. My podcast is called Lessons in Life and Love with Coach Riana Milne. And right now I have 118 shows out at this moment. There's stuff for singles, couples, straight, LGBTQ, something for everybody there. Teenagers as well. I work with those 16. 76 was my oldest client, men and women. So there's something there for everyone. And then if they're interested in the singles trips, romanceinternationaltravel.com.
Wow.
And cool couples can go too. Couples that want to go to different places, like I have a European trip coming up next summer, and it's couples want to go, and it's like, but I don't really know much about it, and I don't want to figure out all the great things to do, so we'll just go with Riana.
All in.
Yeah.
So you're covering all areas, but also tell us a little bit more. You're a #1 best-selling author, so tell us about your books too.
Oh, sure. Okay, so Love Beyond Your Dreams is the kingpin. It's 400 pages, and a lot of this information was mentioned from there. And the sister book, which means they're meant to go together, is Live Beyond Your Dreams, from fear and doubt to personal power, purpose, and success. And Live is all about the mindset for success, because you need both to be happy in life. You can't have just dating skills with a bad mindset, right? If you're still fear-based and afraid to get out and date, what good is all the dating skills going to do for you? If you have a positive mindset, but you're making mistakes in dating due to your foundation as a child, again, it's not your fault, but you're there. Why do I keep screwing up in love? But I'm confident and I'm successful in business, but you can't figure out the love piece. Then that's another sign childhood traumas have been healed. So Live and Love Beyond Your Dreams are my favorite 2 books because I use them in coaching. However, I've written 12 books now.
Wow.
My workbooks and all my course content is originally written all from research. And there's different levels of courses. I have one called Success in Dating, which is a self-study, and Dating to Mating, which is coaching with me, and then Relationship Rescue for my couples. So I've been a writer since I've been a young kid. Here's a story about childhood trauma. I won in high school the English award for Who's Who of American high school students, and they only give 1 per senior class. So I was all excited. Yes, I wrote poetry. I had 200 poems written and published by that point. I wrote for the newspaper, but I brought it home, Mom, because here's something she could be proud of. I just won the Who's Who of American high school students for English. She goes, why would you get it? Are you sure they didn't make a mistake? I'm like, Mom, I do write a lot. It was like, here's another example of not getting a compliment. But all that was healed with my mom before she passed, of course. You can just remember some of these examples from your past where you were excited and deserved a compliment and didn't get one. Instead, it was like a verbal put down. I always relate to my clients and their stories. I get it. I've been through it. And most of us have had childhood trauma. So it's nothing to be ashamed of ever, but to something to like want to get rid of. Yes.
Absolutely. But it does sound like a lot of people are talking about having the right mindset and doing all this stuff, meditating and taking time out for self-care. But it sounds like even that could be just really putting a plaster on it. If you're not going in deep enough to actually heal.
And the good thing is you really only need it once, because once you understand it and you know all the skills to deal with anything, we're going to be challenged in life, right? That's normal. But how do you handle those challenges? Are you one that says, why me? Or you act the victim? That's what we call living on the dark side of life. That's the fear-based negative mindset. Here's an example. When COVID came in the US, they said, all right, you're locked down for 30 days. Everyone's yelling, upset. I'm going to lose my job. What am I going to do? Freaking out. I'm like, oh, wow, I got 30 days of more time. What do I do with it? So it's the way we look at life.
Different perception. Yeah. Same thing going on everywhere. Did anybody escape it? I don't know, but I don't think there are. So yes, there you go. There's always both sides to look at and you get the choice. What do you want to choose?
And that's part of mindset lessons that I teach. Really important stuff to learn The Mindset for Success is what I call it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and the other books are ebooks that I give. I do a lot of free classes, just give perks. I try to give a lot for free so people can get to know me and understand this a little bit. And then when they're ready to get help, they know where to come.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful. We started off that it is going to be just talking about really relationships and how childhood trauma can affect your relationships in adult life. But actually, we've actually gone the full
Yes.
full circle, because it is a totally holistic way of looking at it all, because your relationship,
holistic, mind, body, spirit,
yeah,
everything. Yes.
not just about your romantic relationships, but this is going to help with your relationships with other family members, but also in business as well.
Yes.
And so as a coach, so now you're really doing what about your goals and where you want to go to? What is next for you? Have you got another book in the making, or what's your thing? Or is it just going to be all about these retreats?
I took a singles cruise. I chose to break off a relationship in December, and a couple friends said, Riana, come on the singles cruise in January. And I'm like, yeah, why not? Because I say yes to opportunities, right? That could be fun. I haven't traveled since COVID. I need a vacation. I definitely knew. And it was just 4 days in a way in the Caribbean for Florida residents. That's pretty close. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this. So I did go, and I had the time of my life. I actually ended up being asked to speak when they found out, oh my God, you're a speaker and an author. Do you want to speak to our group? I said, I'd love to. So then the cruise director, Shelby, who is now my affiliate partner in travel, she's with travelfund.biz. She said, Riana, I want you to speak on all the trips. I said, well, I can't do all of them. I'm a pretty busy coach, but travel is one of my passions. And I always wanted to speak on cruise ships. So absolutely, I will be glad to affiliate with you. So now I'm a licensed travel agent. So that's new for me. I just took that on 2 months ago, and I had my first singles and cool couples, sexy singles and cool couples trip coming up in Cancun, September 14th. So this is brand new for me, and I'm very excited. I'll be giving a couple lectures and some free coaching, and just making sure everyone has a fabulous time. I am like the one that gets the party started too. That's just my personality. So I will make sure everyone.
You're bringing really everything together now, and now you can fit it in around. Yeah.
And I am writing another course. I'm always creating. And as a matter of fact, Karen, before we signed on, I said, I want to give all our listeners 2 free ebooks, right? How to have what is emotionally healthy relationships and signs of the toxic relationship. So that link will be in the show notes. So yes, I'm always creating and trying to give new content to my clients and my fan base, my email base.
Brilliant. Mm-hmm. Lovely. Yes, I will be looking at those too. If I've learned about toxic relationships a few years ago, that's more than a few years ago now, but I know the red
we all have probably experienced them because we all have childhood trauma. That's just the way it works, right?
Absolutely. But you learn from it. Yeah. So the listeners, get in touch. Take a look at the show notes as well to get access to the ebooks as well. So yeah, thank you for your time today, and to everybody else. Well, I will be back on Thursday with a Coffee with Karen. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity